The first one that's coming to me is certainty of self. So just being a grounded confidence in what you have the current ability to do, what you have the current ability to learn, just a real awareness and honest acceptance of where you're at right now and where you've come from.
Well, hello and welcome back to the Amanda Kaufman Show. And we are continuing our series on coaches that don't suck. And I am so excited about this guest because Samantha has been my coach for the last couple of years. And we met in the whole world of learning to market and grow your business. I remember I was just razzle dazzled by Samantha. When we had a chat the other day, I was like, hey, would you like to come on the show? She was a huge yes. She was super supportive, just as she often is. I love this about her. Samantha, welcome to the show. Glad you're here.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
I love it. You're effervescent, so it makes a lot of sense that you're just like ready to go. So Samantha, just take 30 seconds and share with us, what do you do? Like, what's your main thing? And why are we talking about this today?
Well, the 30-second elevator pitch, if you will. I am a performance coach, is the short of it. I'm a performance coach in both aspects of the word, both for performers, actor, singer, models style, but then also the performance within productivity, within increasing sales, within our life of performance. So the communication aspect with business owners, productivity and sales, and then the booking, getting in and out of character, the mindset, all the imposter syndrome that crosses both. So I bring the show and the business in my performance coaching.
I love it. You have such a wealth of really cool experiences. I want to unpack some things with you today about well, the whole theme is around coaches who don't suck. And you clearly do not yourself in your own practice, but you've also had quite a bit of experience working with other coaches as well. So as we kind of kick it off, what have you noticed is the biggest thing that maybe is holding a lot of coaches back from being in their highest performance or being in their greatest brilliance? What do you see as like the top trends in the people that you've worked with?
Yeah, absolutely. So top trend is definitely going to be seeing their top performing self as not them. So there's a difference I find
Ooh.
with like your higher self, when especially when people are talking in the spiritual realm around being your higher self, it tends to start to create this, there's me and then there's she.
Mm-hmm.
And someone, I think I read an email once years ago, and they said that they opt for favorite self. And the difference there is to bring it off of the pedestal, have this higher self literally being higher, not you, detached, this thing that you have to figure out a bridge for. That is when I find that coaches are having a lot of trouble, is because they're rejecting the parts of themselves that are within that higher self. And so if when they're able to see that higher self within them, they can make the bigger steps utilizing what they have.
I love that. And, this gal knows what she's talking about because she's in not so many words, even talking about my own experience. Like I still recall when we sat down and you were officially working with me as my coach, the first thing that we actually talked about was who is that favorite self? And I named her Bianca the Binder Beep, right? It was such a power move because accepting that favorite version of myself and allowing her to step up and step into that next level not only kind of save my business, but save my sanity and just sort of save that sense of self. Because I feel like when you're all fractionated, when you're feeling like you're supposed to be this, but you feel like you really are that, it's like a confusing, misaligned place. So I'm curious, like, what brought you into the coaching space in the first place?
Trauma.
Trauma, just like the rest
Uh,
of us. Yeah.
just exactly. Yeah. Born in Florida, but raised in North Carolina. So I have an accent when I want to. Went from there to Japan, and I was married at the time, which is its own story. So ended up in Japan, just kind of doing the whole trophy wife thing. Like I was doing my own thing, but I didn't need to really worry about finances or carrying things myself. Like as long as I was taking care of the home and doing what good Southern girls do, then that was good. It turned out that that was not there were just some things happening that were passed off as cultural norms that I was not willing to accept as my space and standard.
Mm.
So, long story short, I decided to completely uproot my life. Hardest thing I've ever done. I left that marriage and human being and my house, and I had $2,000 in two suitcases. And I moved from Japan to Arizona in 2007 and restarted my life and started healing,
Wow.
which was its own journey. I have a degree in music therapy, and so I've always been big in personal development. But I also always process out loud. So talk therapy for me, there are quite a few talk therapists who I don't believe should be talk therapists, which puts a bad rap on it because it really is. There are amazing therapists that are very helpful and very good. And anyway, so even though of course I love therapy, I'm into the personal development. I never had a lot of success with talk therapy because, as I now know, you can only process through what you're aware of, which was great. I was aware of all kinds of stuff, but not of any of the underlying. So I had a friend that suggested I try hypnotherapy, and I did. Rocked my world, and that's what started the healing aspect for me, where I started getting certified and going, holy guacamole, I have to bring this into everything. And so that's where all of the subconscious work and energy expertise came from, was me experiencing for myself, realizing this shift I hadn't felt before and experienced before, and just started rewriting programs and going, holy, we got to bring this to the table.
That aspect of coaching. Say more.
Well, I find that the best coaches, the ones that don't suck, if you will, coaching isn't something we do, it's something we are. And
Oh,
so,
yes. I love this.
so as far as my, the fact that I work in the energy and the subconscious, I bridge the woo and the do, I'm the who of where we're at with all of the show and the business, all of that clever, fancy stuff. My specialty is in healing because that's what I did and that's how I made progress and ended up actually being able to have a business and doing all the things. But as far as coaching, what got me started in that was just because I existed. I've always been like the leader, either the line leader, and I've always been a very good, I find this to be a very good leader, where I will lead when there is not a leader and I will follow a good leader. So I will lead
Mm.
the followers or I will be the leader depending on who is in charge. So I don't have to be the lead or nothing. I can be the second in command leading the rest underneath a good head. And I found that really plays into the coaching aspect because you end up having these heads that just sometimes they're heads via ego. And so I then have to translate what's going on and I end up being the mediator and I end up being the point of contact anyway, because we've got everyone else that's supposed to be following the lead of ego that I'm making all that work. So coaching is just something I've always done my whole life. I'm the oldest of six. So just leading and being a coach, a teacher, a mentor is just something that I've done. And how it has shaped throughout my life was due to 2017 and on.
I love this. Thank you so much for sharing it. You're making me reflect too on my own journey and the journeys that I've heard from so many clients where we go on this search to find this solution because we're necessarily finding the solution that we're looking for. And sometimes it's like very intentional. Sometimes it's quite accidental. And the fun thing about coaching is I'm not sure there's too many, well, maybe my kids, but not too many kids in the first grade going, when I grow up, I want to be a coach, right? They don't have necessarily the awareness of the psychology or the energy work or any of the things because it's not really commonly taught, but you can definitely find it as you're looking for real solutions. I'm curious, you've allowed evolution in your business and in your coachiness. And I loved how you kind of brought up this idea. I was almost thinking of like a Sigma type leader, right? So not necessarily having to be alpha, but also not necessarily needing to be beta either, like just kind of your own thing. And that tracks a lot with kind of traditional healers and healing work as well, is they kind of they're hierarchy adjacent as opposed to necessarily being firmly part of the pack in a certain way. I think one of the things I really admire about you is your willingness to try new things and to express in new ways. Do you mind speaking to that strength? Have you always been that way of being willing to try something new or show what you got and try it? Or is that something that you've really cultivated?
Thank you, first of all. Yeah, I think that also goes into, as you were speaking before, a big piece of talking about how I was always a leader in one way or the other. And what I find when I'm coaching with people that have that higher self on the hierarchy or on the pedestal is that they are likely to have grown up in a place where leadership is a quality, not a job. And
Mhm.
so I was recognized for being a leader within the class or within like these places. And so I think a coach is just someone that has monetized that. And I think that that's another moment of almost imposter syndrome where they're like, there isn't, like you were mentioning, something to find. They are the solution, but they've never considered that their skills are the answer. It's like, okay, I can be a leader within what company or within what can I be a leader to help these people instead of realizing that being a leader is what helps the people.
That's so good.
Thank you. So, with that, I bring me back around to my ability to prefer the variety pack of life. It is something that I was also just born with. My parents divorced when I was 18 months old. And I don't know if this really has anything to do with it, but they did a joint custody where I was weekdays with my mom, weekends with my dad my whole life. So they never lived further than 30 minutes from each other. Like they just made agreements. And so that's how I did things. So I always had two sets of friends and two sets of parties and two sets of presents and two sets of outings. Like, so I didn't have a mutual best friend until I was in college when I had a roommate for 4 years. Is my first mutual best friend. The best friends that I had in school all hung out on the weekends. And then the best friends that I had at church all went to school together. And so I had people I was clinging to, but it was always changing. Our school redistricted itself 4 times. So I went to 5 different elementary schools without moving because they just rezoned us. Anyway, I was like, if my mom is listening, she's going to call me and say it's 4.
It
So I went
is
to 4 different
fun.
elementary schools. And even within my siblings, I was the oldest, but the only one with my mom and my dad. I have 3 half siblings and 2 steps. So even that dynamic was changing. So I think as a person, I took those into really liking to switch and change. And even still, like now, I'll change my decor. I change my iPhone background, which I've had to catch myself when things get too good for too long. I get restless because that consistency is not something my body had regulated to previously. But anyway,
Mm,
so me trying something else is how I would function when I was little. So it became something that I liked as I got older. So
yeah,
it's
that
been
makes
more
a lot of
so
yeah, and thanks for sharing that. What would you say are the top three things that a coach who wants to do really well, i.e., not suck, what are the top three character traits you've seen in the most successful coaches that you've either worked with, admired, supported? Like, what would you say are those three major things to keep in mind and to act on? Not just keep in mind, but like do something about.
totally beautiful. Great question. The first one that's coming to me is certainty of self. So just being a grounded confidence in what you have the current ability to do, what you have the current ability to learn, just a real awareness and honest acceptance of where you're at right now and where you've come from. So a certainty of self is going to be first characteristic. The second one is going to be confidence in your ability to manipulate the environment, like your group of friends, or picking a coach, or pulling in resources to what you're going to move forward with. Kind of within that certainty of self, there's just the you portion. And then there's the confidence that you will make the choice that is going to lead you down a path that you will either pivot from or continue down, but that you are able to do that. What is happening? So many things look different on paper than they do in real life. And even things that aren't meaning that they are good or bad. But if you try to learn tennis from a book, it's just going to be different when you actually get on the court, even if you understand everything about it, because it's different to experience it. So also want to make sure that that's a neutral space, not saying it could be better or worse. It could just be different. So just make the dang choice. Then the third thing would be the quality of having a mindset slash practice, whether it be spiritual, whether that be religious, whether it be whatever, having some sort of recentering back to self and back to the grounded awareness to be able to take the next steps. That kind of practice is going to be essential for continuing to move forward so that you can take your car to the shop, change your own
Yeah.
oil, and then keep going.
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, I'm always a bit surprised, and I've woven it into my programs and my practices to remind people, hey, journal, right? Have that reflective practice, and like don't journal just when you're pissed off, like journal every day. Take stock, like evaluate how things are going, and also like where are you going and what matters to you, because it's amazing how when you move down the path of life, how you gain this clarity about what does and doesn't matter. And so I can tell you that due to my journaling practice, I've learned about myself, getting grounded in the self, that things that I thought were so important to me even 2 years ago are just not, but I think without that reflective conversation and dialogue that happens through a journaling practice, I very much doubt that I would have gotten there. And the other thing that I'm always encouraging people towards is meditation and building in breaks and rejuvenation. I was blessed to have a coach early in my career who said, Amanda, you being chill is possibly one of your highest paid priorities. And she was encouraging me to take bubble baths in the middle of the afternoon on a Tuesday. And I remember thinking, my goodness, coach, I think you've got three heads. But it was honestly one of the highest return on investment pieces of wisdom that I've gotten from any coach ever. How to chill, how to find my chill and find my center and what I wanted to do. So, like, are there any other kind of practices? I saw you writing down a couple of things. So, like, what have you got for the people?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love this. And I think that there's value in bringing up things just in a different way. And so
Mm-hmm.
just I'll work backwards from what you said, the breaks, love that. Just bringing awareness to there's a difference between unplugging and recharging, making sure that people are registering you need both. And then the other thing when you're taking the breaks, especially either at the beginning or just as you're going, when you get that tinge of either of resistance, whatever that story is, I have found it really helpful and beneficial. And I do coach my clients to think, really dial into what is it that you're worried about, right? Either if I'm on a break, I'm not productive, or if I'm on a break, then my company will fall apart, whatever. And have an affirmation every time you feel a tug while you're in your bubble bath on a Tuesday. I'm still making money. Or if you're resting or sleeping in, an alarm goes off at 8 and you snooze it till noon, be like, and I'm still making money. Or, and I'm still calling in bookings or whatever it is that you're afraid you're going to lose, helping to calm your nervous system down with those affirmations when you feel the pull and the nudge of resistance around any kind of break. I do encourage that. And then just be aware when you're avoiding and when you're actually unplugging and recharging, because that's also not the same thing. It'll feel different in your body. We can talk about that later. On meditation wise, I love that. I also want to set an expectation for people, because at least for me in the beginning, I had a very fast mind. I didn't like yoga because number one, I wasn't good at it, quote unquote, because I was going too fast. I also like to be good at things, and I didn't feel like I was either as flexible or, I did felt like I wasn't good at it because I couldn't go as deep in my stretches. I couldn't quiet my mind. I couldn't do these things. And so I just decided I didn't like yoga, really, that I didn't like doing things that I wasn't naturally good at. But with that, it also took me a long time to meditate because I, again, thought of it like I have to spend an hour in complete silence, and it just
Oh
sounded
my
like
goodness, I
torture.
could never.
Right. And so I think it's just also like putting out that meditation is like working out. You could be CrossFit, you could do yoga, you could swim, you could dance, you could do all kinds of things, and it's still working out. There's all kinds of ways to meditate. There's just being really intentional with the way that you make tea. There's a whole tea practice. You look it up on Google. There's walking meditations, and I don't mean meditations you do while walking. I mean that there's like every step that you take, right? I grew up in the Methodist church. It was Lutheran and then Methodist. We would do breaths on retreats, and it'd be like more of you when you breathe in, less of me. Don't love that one, but that kind of practice of even just the breathing, all of that is meditation. Meditation is really just coming in, centering in, dialing and grounding in. And however that works for you, hugging a tree, like you can just sit in a tree. Anyway, I just want to open up the space that meditation does not have to be, not that you said it was, Amanda, just getting in people's minds that it doesn't have to be this like hour-long silence fest.
I love it. Like I think of meditation as like a focus release or regulation kind of an exercise. And as somebody with ADHD, it was hard. It was very, very hard in the early days, but I love what you're saying about like there's just so many ways to do it successfully. And it is like any other kind of skill. The more you do it, the better you get at it. For what I found worked really well is I actually started with transition meditations. So one of the hardest things for me with it was remembering to do it. So I would use triggers like if I was coming home from a drive, I would just pause in the car, air conditioning on, we're in Texas, but just pause in the car for a minute or two and just take a beat, slow down, find my breath, and get really present, and then set an intention before I went into the house. So I had kind of a few of those sorts of when I do this, I get to pause, no one will even notice. And then over time, I gave myself greater and greater permission to just like take out legitimate blocks for the meditation. So yeah, it was
Absolutely.
a process. Hmm.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. The little atomic habits, trigger habits in the bathroom is usually the one that I pull people on is I'm like, while you're sitting there, instead of on your phone, you could take the urge, right, to hop on your phone, center in, and even just like investigate, like just feel for a second. Sometimes meditation, again, right, like you said, just bringing your awareness in, being present, figuring out what's going down, and then mirror work, shadow work, all those things. While you're washing your hands, instead of looking at your hands, like just look up and tell yourself you love yourself or an affirmation or whatever. I mean, just in those couple seconds, the more that you do it, the skill grows. And then on journaling, the last one that you, well, first one you mentioned, but last one I'm mentioning, I also like to encourage a practice with this. A lot of times I work with perfectionists and people that are overachievers because they have worked really hard. And so that's a piece that they really hold on to, but that's a different story. And what I find with journaling, the resistance I usually hear is either, oh, my handwriting's not good. I can't even read it on, when I come back, or I don't have anything to say, or like, what's the point, right? They just kind of get flustered. And there's multiple kinds of journaling. So there's diarying, right? Which is can be stream of consciousness. Like that is something that typically you're going to be going like Dear Diary, right? You're talking to the diary. And usually you'll read those back, because you'll keep them forever kind of thing. Then there's logging, where you're just objectively, what happened? Did I do this? Yes or no? This could be habit tracking. This could just be getting out a tracking system for the day, which can be written. And then there's intuitive journaling, which is what I like to do. And that is where the point is the process, not the product. So I don't
Mm.
care if you can't read it. I'm actually hoping that your handwriting gets so terrible that your brain is going so fast you can't even write. Literally, when you get good at it, it's pretty cool for me at least. So my handwriting changes depending on like what I'm channeling, like if I'm just really conscious about it or if I'm just kind of flowing. And I end up just like my hand just kind of vibrates and I'm like, because if I try to stop long enough to really write down whatever it is, it like stops the flow and I stop. It like stops
That's
locks
interesting.
my channel down. So I actually, and I use Burnals, but I journal to where the point is not to reread it. The point is just to get in the flow. And it's a practice of being able to tap into that. And then of course there's like a mix in between, but just opening up that as well for, again, my perfectionists that are thinking, I don't like to journal because I can't read it and blah, blah, blah. Then don't read it.
Yeah,
Just
it's not a performance enhancing task, right? Hey, Samantha, if people want to follow you, what's the best way to do that?
I am most active on Instagram. It's ITS underscore Samantha Belle with an extra E like the princess, Belle. It's Samantha Belle. And I don't know if I should say this out loud, but I guess we're committing to it. I'm getting on TikTok.
What? Okay,
So,
you heard it here first, folks.
so if you go there, there's not an account.
Well, make sure you follow her on Instagram and do give her a follow. She's a real treasure and she's always working on really cool projects that you're going to want to keep up with. Well, thank you everybody for joining me for this episode and listening to Samantha and I talk a lot about journaling. Do me a favor and share this episode with a like-minded coachy friend or three, and be sure to subscribe and to leave a 5-star review. We just really want to get as many coaches off that couch into progress and really feeling more confidence in what they're doing. So do help us out with that review and that subscription, and we will see you on a future episode. We'll see you soon.